I have to use my DJ voice.
It's not my real voice. That's what I get for using AI. All right, ready to go? Okay, well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon at the end of a very long day of some great sessions. I am Martin Rieger, Chief Solutions Officer of Stack Armor.
Hey everyone, and I'm Johan Detweiler. I'm the Senior Director of Compliance with Stack Armor.
So today we're going to talk about something very, very important, very critical, and something that I think everybody here, regardless of where you are in the industry, is going to impact you in some way, which is the executive orders for the risk and assessment of AI. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, so I won't take too much of your time. I'm pretty sure everyone's heard a lot about Executive Order 14110 today. You know, it's one of the guiding principles that we have right now regarding what the federal government is looking to do with the usage of AI. You know, I think it's a really good step. I think it's giving us a framework to sort of move towards looking at the risk, looking at the usage of AI. But as everyone knows, it has some pretty lofty goals. So, you know, it has yet to be seen if we're going to be able to meet all those deadlines. But I think conventions like this are a really good step towards trying to implement this executive order.
So with that, let's take a little bit of a look at the crosswalk of AI. So, you know, the United States is not the only country that's working on this right now. The European Union, for example, along with multiple other global organizations, have all begun establishing the criteria for trustworthiness, but most notably the risk and how we manage that risk. So when we look at each of these sections here, when you look at the NIST AI RMF draft, right, is it valid? Is it reliable? Safety, right? You'll notice that when you look left to right across each of these, everyone else is really looking at the same thing. So kind of the beauty of NIST, which for those of you not familiar, National Institute of Standards and Technology, they're known for creating compliance frameworks to assess things like risk based on a series of security and compliance controls. So when we look at scans and resiliency, what does the security look like of the AI? What do those training models look like? How is privacy impacted? What does bias look like, right? So when we assess things like FedRAMP right now, we're assessing the security of the organization and the team that is developing AI, for example. Well, the next step is we may understand security, but how much can we trust it, and what does that look like? So again, the European Union AI Act, along with the executive orders, in addition to the development of a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, this is happening all over the world in real time, which is to say this is the fastest I would say I've ever seen anything move in the government. And for those that work in government, yes, this is moving really, really quickly.
Yeah, so when you're considering risk in AI, it's a little bit of a different framework than I think we're all used to. And so we've kind of put together what we consider some of the main additional considerations that you need to take into account. So I think one of the main difference is that there are still going to be security controls, but you know, typically security controls are needed to protect the system from the world. And I think one of the interesting things that is introduced by AI and the eventual risk management framework that's going to be used is that you need to take the concept of controls that are needed to protect the world from the system. That's something new, and that's something that I think needs to be built into the frameworks that we currently have. There's also some other ideas that we wanted to consider and we think need to be brought in. One of the ideas, of course, being that development is basically part of the service offering. You can no longer develop outside of the security boundary. It has to be an element of the boundary, has to be evaluated. You can't have black box AI that simply works, but we don't know why. We need to build in that explainability. And then also the idea of zero trust. The AI should be considered the ultimate insider threat. It's something that sits within your system that has capabilities vastly beyond what we've seen. So we need to kind of even reevaluate our current zero trust architecture and start to look at making sure that every process within the system is authorized individually. Also the allowable usage of AI. Just determine what do we want to use AI for and where do we not want to use AI. You know, this is going to be very, very important for government agencies. Widespread usage of AI, it can have massive benefits, but we all know that there's some serious risk if everything we're doing is AI-based. So we need to really sit down and consider what are going to be the allowable usages of it.
So, and that sort of leads a little bit into, you know, everybody's familiar with shadow IT, and there is a huge risk right now with shadow AI, which is to say employees using AI for corporate activities, agency or federal or state activities, even DoD, where potential information that should not go into something like ChatGPT is then spilled into the environment. And you have a spillage where the organization or the agency may not even know that that occurred. Just quick show of hands, how many of you are familiar with the NIST 853 security controls? All right, good, good, good. Okay, so for those of you that are not, right, these security controls are reevaluated every few years. We're currently in revision 5. And on the left-hand side, we have the things that, from an AI perspective, you've got a familiar framework, which is to say, we've got an AI overlay, right, that can be used to address things like trustworthiness, using a standard baseline that augmented with new and additional controls, because this is how we create frameworks and set up risk profiles, can be used to address all of these AI concerns that we have. Now, baselines are, in the security assessment and authorization world, how we measure things, right? So adding these overlays, creating baselines that are designed to assess AI is really the first step. Now, AU is auditing and logging within NIST 853. It's a family all by itself, right? Well, the expectation is that all audit logs and things of that nature are configured, stored in a central location, set to create alerts, that they're frequently reviewed and monitored. Well, on the right-hand side, you have that example of an augmentation control where we can identify, based on a list of events specific to the AI system that we're looking at or that's being considered. And that's an important piece. Not every AI is going to be the same, used for the same purpose or even in the same way. So it has to be tailored. And just for a little bit of reference, Johan and I are both former 3PAO directors. We've been assessing and advising cloud security or cloud service providers for just about a decade. And when we look at something like this, you know, the biggest concern we have is programs like FedRAMP look at security. They don't actually care whether or not the system works. That's between you and the customer. What we care about is, can it be breached? Can it be, you know, manipulated, or the ability to elevate privileges, like you said, insider threat? Well, when we get to something like AI, we're going to have a whole new level of assessors who have that capability of understanding the learning models, understanding what that AI developer has actually created and what's the risk.
Yeah, and that's sort of the thing, is that what we're suggesting is that you can continue to leverage familiar frameworks. I don't think it makes sense for the government to throw out everything that they're currently doing, especially the NIST RMF. I mean, it's so tied into the authorization process. But what I think makes sense is to augment those processes, augment those baselines to include new aspects of the controls that look at AI. And then also borrow from other known frameworks. You know, you can borrow from things like GDPR, CSF, ISO. They are commercial frameworks, but there's still advantageous controls that can be leveraged in there, especially around GDPR. You know, a lot of AI, some of the concerns are around the usage of people's private data. And I think GDPR provides some really, really useful tools that we can leverage in there. So it's the idea of taking what's already in place with the RMF and creating this AI overlay that sits on top of it that can still be utilized by the government in their current authorization frameworks, but then look at the aspects of AIs that are concerning and that introduce new ways of looking at risk and figuring out a way to address those with that overlay.
So let's talk a little bit about compliance, right, with White House and more specifically OMB guidelines. So, you know, we talked for a second about augmenting the existing frameworks with AI overlays, right? The pillars that are currently being developed, because all of this is still in draft. I mean, it's just a few months old. Safety and security, right? We've got to have controls designed to protect both the system and the users. And the user is the most critical piece because regardless of the AI, it's the data that matters, right? So innovation and competition, right? Having the ability to leverage the existing frameworks will ultimately support the ability to have quick and rapid adoption across agencies, states, DoD. I was reading a few articles yesterday about the fact that states and even school districts are putting together working groups to begin evaluating and creating policies for AI because high school kids have jumped all over this, right? Who needs to write their Romeo and Juliet report when they can just drop it in ChatGPT, crank it away, and submit it? So, you know, there's a second aspect of detecting AI. So, you know, the next kind of key thing is the AI bias, right? The ability to incorporate transparency and understand and explain what exactly that AI is doing, how it works, what are they doing with the data, how was it designed, what were the training models included, and of course followed by privacy, right? So the confidentiality along with things like integrity and availability, that data through a defense in depth approach, which is a nice way of saying many, many layers of security. Defense in depth has been around for a very, very long time. Almost every security framework has it baked in that's NIST based. But that being said, authorizing the federal use of AI, right, while still having the analysis to understand what is the risk of this in the department, what is the risk within the agency or the subcomponent or the DoD mission owner, what does that look like? Right now, we're only looking at the security, right? We're not looking at the potential of what could happen. Lastly, international leadership. As we mentioned a couple slides back, looking at the crosswalk, we're not the only ones working on this. So having the ability to integrate this analysis globally and understand AI that's being developed around the world, perhaps one of the other nations or other, for the EU, for example, may have already assessed and analyzed the risk. Can we make use of that? That's probably where I'll stop at this moment. I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
No, I mean, I think that's the main thing, is that there is an opportunity for the United States to continue its international leadership. But I think the way to do that is we have to leverage what is in place. We cannot restart and rebuild and look at this, the authorization of AI as something completely different. I think we have to augment what's in place, bring together industry, bring together experts, so that we can work together to make sure that there's a rapid but safe adoption of AI. I think that's absolutely key.
How many folks use LinkedIn? Everybody. Did you see the LinkedIn AI that was released over the weekend? So you can begin a post and then click on write it better with AI, right? So I mean, how long did that take them? I think it took them a couple weeks to build this out. But the concern we have, right, is the potential for AI to start.
All of LinkedIn to be written by AI, and then what is the point of LinkedIn anymore? You know, where are the personal opinions? Where are everything that used to make it special? And so that's sort of one of those insidious threats that we all kind of have to be aware of.
Yeah, so that goes back to the using it for the right reason, right? There's a really, really good book called Who Owns the Data? Written about 10 years ago, and it forecasted everything we're seeing today, which is to say the moment that AI became readily available at your fingertips. So the protection of that data, the privacy, the bias, all of your rights, federal government use, all of it's got to be assessed. So with that, I think we're at time.
I think we're at time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.